was 17 days from leaving for college when my mother told me my tuition had found a better use. I count things for a living now, but back then I was just a girl who'd been counting down. $43,200. That's what my parents took from the account my grandmother had built for me, dollar by dollar over 18 years, and handed to my brother for a company he hadn't finished naming yet. Welcome back to Family Revenge Stories New, the channel where quiet people keep the receipts and family learns that boundaries have a price. If stories about dignity, documents, and consequences are your thing, drop a comment and subscribe. I'm a forensic accountant. I trace money for a living, where it comes from, where it hides, where it goes when people don't want it found. I didn't choose the profession by accident. I grew up in a house where money moved like weather, sudden and unexplained, and somebody always got soaked. I learned early that the safest place to stand was wherever the receipts were. My grandmother started that account the week I was born. She wasn't rich. She drove a school bus for 31 years and put $50 in every month like a tithe to a God she actually believed in. By the time I was 17, it had become something close to sacred in our house, not because anyone treated it that way, but because everyone knew not to touch it. It was the one number in our family nobody argued about. My husband Daniel used to say I love spreadsheets the way other people loved music, that I could hear a melody in a column of numbers that lined up the way they should. We'd been married 6 years when this story starts, in a small brick house with a kitchen too small for the table we loved anyway. He was an electrician. He believed numbers told the truth even when people didn't, and he married me, I think, because I believed it too. My family ran on an arithmetic I didn't notice until I was old enough to do the math myself. My brother Marcus was the investment. I was the operating cost. He got the car, the tutoring, the benefit of the doubt. I got the responsibility, the one who picked up extra shifts, who drove 2 hours to fix my mother's printer, who never asked for anything because asking felt like admitting I needed something they might say no to. I had stopped noticing the pattern. That's the thing about arithmetic you've run your whole life. Stops looking like math. Starts looking like love. The betrayal happened on a Tuesday, which is a detail that still surprises me, that something this large could happen on a day that ordinary. I had 3 boxes packed in my childhood bedroom, addressed in my own handwriting, ready for a dorm room 1,100 miles away. My mother called me into the kitchen at 6:40 in the evening. I remember the time because the oven clock was behind her, glowing green over her shoulder the entire conversation, like a witness that refused to look away. She told me Marcus had a chance to launch his company, a logistics software startup he'd been pitching at dinner for 2 months, and that the investors wanted to see family skin in the game before they'd commit their own. My father said the words, "It's just sitting there," about my grandmother's account, as if money that isn't actively burning is money that's being wasted. My mother said, "You can take out loans. Marcus can't take out an investor." $43,200. Gone the way water goes down a drain you didn't know was open, quickly, and with a sound you only notice once it's empty. I didn't raise my voice. I asked one question. "Whose name is the account in?" My mother said, "Does it matter? We're a family." I went back to my room and I did the thing I always do when the ground moves. I documented. I took a screenshot of the account balance from that morning. $43,206. Timestamp 9:14 a.m. I took a screenshot of the balance that night. $11. I saved the text my father sent 2 days earlier, the one that said, "Don't worry about the account, it's not going anywhere." Timestamped 4 days before it went everywhere. I sat alone with that single text for a long time. Not crying. Just looking at it the way you look at a number that doesn't reconcile, knowing the discrepancy isn't a mistake. It's a decision wearing a mistake's clothes. I went to college on loans. I'm not going to dwell on those years because the story isn't about the loans. It's about what came after, and the after took its time arriving the way consequences usually do, patient, unhurried, certain. Marcus's company was called Veltrix Logistics. For the first year it looked from the outside like vindication for everyone who'd bet on him, which was everyone in my family but me. There were LinkedIn posts. There was a launch party I wasn't invited to, which I learned about because my cousin posted a photo and tagged the venue, time-stamped 8:52 p.m., my brother's hand raised with a champagne flute, captioned, "To the people who believed in me." I didn't comment. I saved the screenshot the way I save everything, out of habit more than intention. A forensic accountant doesn't delete evidence. She doesn't always know yet what it's evidence of. She just knows not to throw it away. 14 months after that party, my grandmother died. She was 86. She'd had a stroke in March and a quiet, dignified decline after that, and I was the one who sat with her most afternoons because I was the one who always showed up, and because by then I think we both knew something the rest of the family didn't. The reading of her will happen in a conference room with gray carpet and a window that looked out at a parking lot, which is the kind of detail you remember when the next 10 minutes change your life. Her attorney, a measured man named Mr. Okafor who'd represented her for 30 years, slid a folder across the table and asked us each to confirm our names before he began. My mother sat with the posture of someone who'd already spent the inheritance in her head. My father checked his phone twice in 4 minutes. Marcus sat closest to the attorney, like proximity might improve his share. The will named a trust. Not for the house, not for the savings everyone assumed would be split evenly. For a separate account my grandmother had opened 9 years earlier, funded quietly with the sale of a small piece of land she'd never told anyone she owned. The balance, as of the date of her death, $161,000. The trust named one beneficiary. Me. Not in equal shares. Not to be divided among. Me specifically by name, with a clause that read, and I will remember this sentence until I die. In recognition of the account taken from her in 2014, which I was not consulted about and would not have permitted. My mother made a sound I'd never heard her make. My father said very quietly, "That can't be right." Mr. Okafor said it was right, and that my grandmother had updated the trust the same week she learned what happened to my tuition, a fact she had apparently known for 9 years and never once mentioned to me, choosing instead to fix it in a document instead of a conversation, the way some people prefer to apologize with their actions and let their actions outlive them. There was a second revelation, smaller, and somehow it hit harder. A sealed letter addressed to me, that Mr. Okafor had been instructed to give me privately, after the reading, not during it. I opened it in my car in the parking lot we'd all been staring at through the window. It was 4 sentences. The third one said, "You were never the cost of this family. You were the one paying for everyone else's math." I didn't act yet. I just understood completely for the first time what had actually happened 9 years earlier, and what my grandmother had quietly spent the rest of her life correcting. It took 11 days for the calls to start. My mother first, light and casual, asking how I was holding up, which was code for asking what I planned to do with money she'd already mentally divided. Then my father, more direct, "Your grandmother wasn't in her right mind at the end, you know that." She had been, demonstrably, lucid enough to sign 3 separate documents in front of 2 witnesses and her longtime attorney, but facts have never stopped my family from rewriting a story they preferred. Marcus came to my house on a Sunday. Veltrix Logistics, it turned out, had been bleeding money for months, a fact I didn't yet know the full shape of, only that he showed up wearing the kind of smile people wear when they need something and have decided charm is cheaper than honesty. He sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd read the trust 3 times, and said, "Look, I know things got weird with the will, but that money is kind of family money. Grandma would have wanted it spread out evenly. She wasn't thinking about Veltrix when she wrote that. I asked him one question. What was Veltrix's burn rate last quarter? He didn't answer. He didn't know the number. A man asking me for money couldn't tell me how fast he was losing it. That was the only thing I needed to hear. After he left, I called my attorney. I said 4 words. Send the letters now. I'd had her draft them the week after the reading. Formal notice to my parents and brother that the trust was valid, final, and not open for renegotiation, along with a polite but unambiguous statement that any further attempts to access or claim the funds would be treated as what they were. If you've ever watched people who couldn't spare one afternoon for you suddenly find all the time in the world the moment money is on the table, you already know exactly where this goes. Stick with me. The gathering happened 3 weeks later. My mother called it a family dinner. At her house, the kind of dinner that has an agenda dressed up as lasagna. I knew what it was before I walked in. I brought a folder. Not as a prop. As a tool. My father gave a toast before we'd even sat down. The kind of toast that's really a verdict. About family, about grandma's wishes. About how this isn't about money, it's about fairness. Delivered with the practiced warmth of a man who'd rehearsed it in his car. Marcus nodded along like a man at his own trial, pretending it's a celebration. My mother watched me the entire time, waiting to see if I'd flinch. When my father finished, he turned to me and said, "So, we're hoping you'll see reason and split this the way Grandma would actually have wanted." I asked for the floor. He gave it to me generously, the way you give the floor to someone you believe is about to surrender. I opened the folder. I started with the screenshot from 2014, the account at 9:14 a.m., $43,206, and the account that night $11. I read my father's text aloud, the one that said it wasn't going anywhere, and let the silence after it do the work silence is supposed to do. My mother said, "That was a long time ago." I said, 9 years and 4 months to be exact, and moved to the next item. I read the trust language, which I was not consulted about and would not have permitted, and watched my mother's face do something I'd never seen it do before, which was nothing at all, a kind of frozen blankness people wear when they realize the dead have outvoted them. Marcus said, "This is insane, you're trying to humiliate us." And his voice climbed half an octave on the second word. I said, more quietly than before, "I'm reading you a legal document. You're welcome to read it yourselves." My father said louder now that I'd always been cold, that I didn't understand family. I answered that one in 3 words. I understand math. Calm is not the same thing as weak. My family had confused the two my entire life, and I'd let them because it had always been easier than correcting them. It wasn't easier anymore. The last thing I placed on the table was the printout of the launch party photo. Marcus, champagne raised, timestamp 8:52 p.m., caption to the people who believed in me, beside the bank screenshot from the same week, 14 months earlier, $11 where $43,000 had been. Nobody asked who believed in me. I didn't say it out loud. I didn't need to. The 2 pieces of paper side by side said it for me. My Aunt Renee, who had said nothing the entire dinner, finally spoke. "I always thought that money disappearing was strange," she said, not quite looking at anyone. "I should have asked." It was the only honest sentence anyone in that family offered all evening. I told her I appreciated her saying so. I didn't tell her it changed anything because it didn't, not really, and we both understood that without my having to spell it out. My mother tried one more angle, soft now, almost pleading. Grandma loved all of us. She wouldn't have wanted this to come between us. I closed the folder. I said, "She didn't put this between us. You did 9 years ago on a Tuesday while I had boxes packed for college. She just finished the sentence you started." Then I stood up, took my folder, and left before anyone could decide whether to keep arguing with a door that had already closed. The trust released to me in full within 6 weeks, $161,000 untouched, exactly as my grandmother had structured it, with no contest filed because there was nothing left to contest. Veltrix Logistics filed for dissolution 4 months after that dinner, roughly a year after the launch party photo was taken. Burn rate finally outrunning the runway. Investors pulling out once due diligence caught up with the optimism. Marcus owed money to 2 vendors and a former co-founder. None of it was mine to pay, and I didn't. My parents stopped calling for a while. When my mother eventually reached out again, it was a single text, no apology in it, just a question about whether I'd be at Thanksgiving. I went. I was polite. I was not close. Some repairs are permanent only in the sense that the crack stays visible no matter how often you paint over it. Aunt Renee and I talk more now than we ever did before that dinner. Quietly, without ceremony, the way 2 people talk once they've decided to trust each other a little. The letter from my grandmother lives in the drawer of the desk where I keep our household's important documents, filed appropriately, under nothing in particular, because some things don't belong in a category. I read it maybe twice a year now, usually on her birthday. The line about paying for everyone else's math has stopped stinging. It's just true now, the way a fact is true once you've stopped arguing with it. I used part of the trust to pay off the loans I took out the year my tuition disappeared, closing a debt that had existed in one form or another since I was 17. I used another part to fund a small scholarship in my grandmother's name at the community college where she used to drive the morning bus route, for students who are the ones who show up, the ones who pay, the ones nobody thinks to ask if they need anything. It isn't revenge. It's just where the money was always supposed to go. I think about the arithmetic my family ran on me for most of my life. The quiet ledger where my showing up was treated as a constant and my needs were treated as a rounding error. What I learned eventually is that you're allowed to close an account you never agreed to open. You're allowed to stop paying a debt nobody told you that you owed. The people who taught me to count taught me that, without meaning to, and I'm grateful for the lesson even though I wish it hadn't. If it reminded you that quiet people keep the receipts, and that boundaries are allowed even with blood, take that as your sign. Update what needs updating. Tell someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.